That ice cream in your freezer might not be what you think it is. The cheerful carton with pastel colors and promises of rich and creamy texture could be hiding a formula built more in a lab than on a dairy farm. Over the past few weeks, we examined ingredient labels, butterfat percentages, and manufacturing tricks used by some of the biggest ice cream brands in America. What we found is a gap between nostalgic marketing and modern food science. Help us reach 500 subscribers so we can keep exposing what's really hiding in your grocery cart. Let's start with a brand many families grew up with, Breyers. Founded in 1866, Breyers once prided itself on simple ingredients and classic flavors. But over time, especially after corporate acquisitions, many of its popular flavors quietly changed. Flip over certain cartons today and you'll notice something strange. Some products are no longer labeled ice cream, but frozen dairy dessert. That wording matters. It often signals lower butterfat content and the addition of stabilizers like guar gum and carrageenan. Instead of relying on cream and egg yolks for body, these formulas use plant-based thickeners to create the illusion of richness. Do a simple melt test at home, and you may see foamy separation instead of smooth liquid cream. When nostalgia masks reformulation, consumers rarely notice until they read the fine print. Next in the freezer aisle is Blue Bunny, a brand known for its soft, easy-to-scoop texture. That softness feels luxurious, straight from the freezer, but it often comes from a manufacturing practice called overrun. Overrun refers to the amount of air whipped into ice cream during production. Legally, companies can significantly increase volume by incorporating air, meaning a larger container may hold less actual dairy than you expect. In some cases, the product can feel light because a substantial portion of it is air bubbles, stabilized by corn syrup and emulsifiers. Compare the weight of a similar-sized premium brand, and you may be surprised by the difference. When you're paying for a full tub, but half the volume is air, the value proposition changes dramatically. Take a look at Turkey Hill, a brand that leans heavily on farm imagery and rustic branding. Barns, rolling fields, and all-natural style fonts create the impression of small-batch dairy craftsmanship. But the ingredient list tells a more complicated story. Some flavors contain multiple gums, including guar gum, locust bean gum, and cellulose gum. Cellulose gum is derived from plant fiber and is commonly used to improve texture and prevent ice crystal formation. While approved for food use, it replaces some of the structural role traditionally provided by higher butterfat and egg yolks. The result can be a slightly elastic or clingy mouthfeel, rather than the clean melt associated with classic custard-style ice cream. Marketing may emphasize tradition, but formulation decisions often prioritize shelf stability and cost control. Then there's the light innovation category, popularized by brands like Edie's, known in some regions as dryers. Their slow-churned lines promote half the fat with the promise of the same creamy taste. On the surface, that sounds like a win. But achieving lower fat while maintaining texture usually requires reformulation. Skim milk replaces part of the cream, and additional emulsifiers and stabilizers step in to recreate richness. Ingredients such as mono and diglycerides help mimic the emulsifying power of egg yolks. The final product may taste smooth, but it's engineered smoothness. When butterfat decreases, something else must compensate. While not inherently dangerous, the trade-off means you're no longer eating traditional ice cream. You're eating a carefully balanced system designed to simulate it. Budget brands deserve scrutiny too. Great value ice cream sold under Walmart's store label often wins on price, but low cost usually reflects aggressive cost control in sourcing and formulation. Ingredient panels may include polysorbate 80, artificial flavors, added color like annatto, and vitamin A palmitate to replace nutrients lost during processing. The goal is to meet legal standards for ice cream or frozen dairy dessert at the lowest possible production cost. Texture can feel icy if butterfat levels are minimal, and flavor may rely heavily on artificial extracts rather than real vanilla beans. While the product remains legally compliant and safe to consume, it illustrates how far large-scale manufacturing can drift from traditional dairy recipes in pursuit of price competitiveness. Another premium-priced but controversial option is Jenny's Splendid Ice Creams. Unlike the previous brands, Jenny's positions itself as innovative and chef-driven. However, it takes a non-traditional approach by skipping egg yolks entirely in many recipes. Instead, it builds structure using tapioca syrup and sometimes cream cheese. This creates a dense, intensely creamy texture that some consumers love and others find heavy or gummy. At over $10 per pint in many markets, expectations are high. The debate isn't about cheap fillers here, but about whether innovation enhances or complicates what ice cream is supposed to be. When a brand reinvents structure, it risks dividing its audience. Texture becomes polarizing rather than universally indulgent. Now let's shift to brands that still lean heavily on classic formulation. Tillamook is owned by a farmer cooperative in Oregon. Many of its core flavors feature relatively short ingredient lists: cream, skim milk, sugar, egg yolks, and natural flavorings, sometimes with minimal stabilizers for transport stability. Butterfat levels are typically higher than mass-market competitors, which contributes to a dense scoop and a slower, creamier melt. Because the cooperative is farmer-owned, the brand emphasizes milk quality as a central identity rather than a cost problem to minimize. While not entirely free of stabilizers, the base formula remains close to traditional custard-style ice cream, prioritizing dairy content over volume expansion through air. Finally, there's Häagen-Dazs, a brand built on simplicity since 1960. Despite its Scandinavian-sounding name, it was founded in the Bronx with a straightforward philosophy: charge more, use fewer ingredients. Many of its classic flavors contain just 5 components: cream, skim milk, sugar, egg yolks, and natural flavor. With butterfat levels often around 16%, the product freezes harder and requires slight tempering before scooping. But once softened, it melts into smooth liquid cream rather than foamy separation. There are no corn syrups replacing sugar, and no long list of gums dominating the ingredient panel. The richness comes from dairy itself. In side-by-side comparisons, density and flavor clarity often stand out immediately. So what separates the brands to avoid from the ones considered safer? It usually comes down to 3 factors: butterfat content, ingredient simplicity, and air incorporation. If a carton lists more than 7 or 8 ingredients, especially multiple gums and emulsifiers, that's a signal to look closer. If the label says frozen dairy dessert instead of ice cream, that's another clue.